Well, after that riveting video. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for yet another opportunity to come into your house today and to learn more about you. Father, as we approach your word today, I just ask that what is said here, what is heard here, Lord, will be from your lips. Lord, I pray that you'll get me out of the way and that your Holy Spirit will be the teacher. I pray, Lord, that in the process of this lesson that I will learn too. I pray, Lord, that we will grow and not leave this room unchanged. May you be honored and glorified in all that's said and done. In Christ's name. Well, you can tell summer's here. My attendance is a bit down. There was a student at the University of Central Florida, and he had broken up with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend sent him a letter, 4 pages, handwritten. And in that letter, she apologized. She apologized for the way she had treated him, for the mistakes she had made in the relationship, etc. Sounds pretty good, right? His reaction, though, was interesting. He took the letter, and he read it, and he graded it. He went through, and he looked at it. First thing he noticed was that the indentions were wrong on the paragraph, so that was a problem. And the introduction was kind of weak. It just wasn't really saying everything. He went down through the text and started marking it up. He got down and he wrote notes at the end. He said, you know, the hypothesis here is strong, but there's no evidence to really back up what the author is saying. You know, it's all contradictory, etc. She can't seem to make up her mind. And he gave it a big fat D- and sent it back to her. He also tweeted about it, got 330,000 follows on it. So we can argue about the tweeting and, you know, the disrespect and various kinds of things like that. And I don't know what the content of the letter was like. I haven't read it. But I have to ask you a question. Was what she did in sending a letter of apology wrong? Was she trying to make things right? Was that wrong? You see, sometimes we think that it's just best to leave things alone. Let's just not go there. I have a problem with you, but, you know, it's not going to be resolved. It's going to be too hard to resolve. So I think I'm just going to back off, and I'm not going to go there. The thing is what she did, at least in the spirit, on the surface of what she did, was extremely right. We should be working toward restoration, for reconciliation in broken relationships. Our memory verse is 2 Corinthians 13:11. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Strive for full restoration. Encourage one another. Be of one mind. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace will be with you. Sounds good, right? But it's hard. It is hard. Seeking full restoration is tough. Because people hurt us. People wound us with some of the different things they do, and we wound them. The thing is, we have all been called into relationships, whether we like them or not. Whether we want to hide in our closet. My Uncle Frank, by the way, I'm going to confess some family issues. My Uncle Frank was a person who didn't really like to be around people very much. And if people would come over to his house, they would look around and say, well, where's Frank? And they'd look and they'd look, and they might find him downstairs in a closet. Because he just didn't want to be bothered by people. And so he'd hide away. I feel like that sometimes, do you? That you really don't want to deal with people. You'd rather just be a hermit and hide away. But the thing is, we've been called to relationships. That's what life is like. That's what it's about, is relationships. And they can get sticky, and they can be hard, and they can be painful, yes. But we can't avoid them and be living the way we're supposed to live. Because God has called us into a relationship with Him and a relationship with others. You know, as a missionary, I saw people leave the field for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it was sickness, sometimes a war is going on in the country, sometimes the death of a family member. That's why we left. We left because of death, because of sickness for family members, my parents. But you know what the number one reason they say that missionaries leave the field? Other missionaries. Their relationships with other missionaries are not good. And so they leave the field and they move on to someplace else. Do you know what happens in churches, why people leave churches? Other people. I don't like the way that pastor talks. Pointing too many fingers. I don't like the way Sister Susie treated me, I tell you. She's going to act like that. I'm going someplace else. And what about Brother Bob? Brother Bob. Man, I have not met a bigger hypocrite in my life than Brother Bob. He's always talking about other people. And so we leave. We take our problems with us, unfortunately, but we leave and infect the next church. Because we never bother to try and heal the relationship. Instead, we just try to run from it. What are causes of relationship problems? Miscommunication, selfishness, inconsideration, taking other people for granted. Yeah, lots of reasons, right? Lots of problems that can end up damaging relationships, even killing the relationship sometimes. Today, though, we're going to tell a tale of two friends, Jesus and Peter. Oftentimes we see Jesus as the master, right? Son of God. We see Peter as the disciple. But there was a friendship here too. There was a relationship that they developed. They walked together for 3 years. Yes, it was a master-teacher relation, master-student relationship. But there was more. There was a friendship there. There was a closeness there. There was love there. And yet, of all those disciples that we hear about, probably Peter is the one we hear having the most squabbles with Jesus. Right? I mean, it's like constant with Peter, it seems. You know, Peter is doing things like, let's see. The idea of the washing of the feet, right? Jesus is washing the disciples' feet, and you know, Peter's like, no part of that. Oh, no, don't wash my feet. He gets rebuked for it. Or he says, you know, Jesus says that one day he'll be killed, and, oh no, Peter, you can't. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Or Peter saying Jesus says that Peter is going to deny him, and Peter's like, no, everybody can desert you. I'm not going to. All this. And Peter even gets so out of control in some ways that he lops off somebody's ear, right? Takes out a sword and cuts off somebody's ear. And what does Jesus do? Put your sword away. Heals the ear. And we see Jesus rebuking Peter over and over. And yet there's this closeness. There's this heart-to-heart action going on between Jesus and Peter. the very end, practically, of their relationship, at the end of Jesus' earthly life, Peter did deny him, right? Denied him 3 times. I don't know the man. And then the cock crows, and Peter leaves weeping bitterly. And that's how the relationship would have ended if Jesus hadn't risen from the dead. But then Jesus rises from the dead, and he comes back, and he sees the disciples. And as we saw last week, on the 3rd time, after coming back to see the disciples, we have that great fishing trip in which they catch all these fish. Right? But we're still in a situation that we're really not sure where Peter is with Jesus. Where he is in this process. How do you react when someone hurts you? How many of you are great forgivers? How many of you are really good at holding grudges? I tell you, of my many, many sins, that has to be one of the ones that I struggle the most with. I am really, really good at nursing the grudge, right? Someone hurt me. I'm never going to like them again. Get up. I may not say it, I may smile and everything, but inside, right? And I pray about that. I really, as a Christian, I pray about that, and I ask forgiveness, and I do my very best to forgive. But it's hard, isn't it? It's hard because we as a species, we as humans, have this tendency that when we get hurt, and we want to lash out. Even if we don't do it physically, we're going to lash out inside. We're going to hold that grudge. We're going to hold that anger. But Jesus, like his Father, is all about reconciliation. It's all about restoration. Taking that relationship and not leaving it the way it is. Not leaving the grudge. But instead bringing it back. Bringing the 2 sides back together again. So that's why this sermon is called Jesus and the Art of Restoration. Jesus and the Art of Restoration. And I say art because, quite frankly, it really is an art, isn't it? Restoration is an art form. Art is not just taking something and taking paint and slashing it on some paper and saying, look, it's art. Granted, it sells for millions of dollars like that. But technically, it's not art. Art has to be sincere. It comes from the heart. It has to be something that you're passionate about. You're putting effort into. Something that you're expressing yourself in that way. Restoration is like that. Restoration, true restoration, is an art form. It's not a fake thing. I mean, how many times, many of you have brothers and sisters, how many times have you been in a situation where you did something wrong and you know mom or dad is going to want you to say, I'm sorry?
Too many accounts.
And so you say, I'm sorry. And maybe you really mean it. Maybe you really mean it. I'm sorry. And the brother or sister goes, I forgive you. I forgive you. Right. Is that forgiveness? No. It's still wounded. It's still broken. They say that because the parents are not, otherwise parents are going to thump you, right? And so you go, no, I'm going to say, I'm sorry. I'm going to say, I forgive you. But there's no meaning behind it. Right. There's a lot of fake forgives you out there. There's a lot of them. True restoration, though, it's a process. It's rarely simple. Often takes a while. Last week we had the fishing expedition. And now they're on the beach. And we see in John 21, 15 to 23, most of the rest of that story. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, Do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord. He said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted, but when you're old, you'll stretch out your hands. Someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what's that to you? You must follow me. Now, like all Scripture, as we've talked, there's a lot of stuff happening in here. And we're not going to talk about every single thing that's happening in this, just because of time and subject matter, etc. But we are going to talk about what's going on as far as restoration. The first thing we see is that Jesus probes to the heart of the issue. Jesus probes, gets in there to the very heart of the issue. If you were to describe Jesus, what would you say? What's Jesus like? Give me some words. Loving. What else? What's Jesus like?
Caring.
Caring. What else?
Compassionate.
Compassionate. What else?
Blunt.
Ooh!
Authoritative.
You read my notes?
Not this time.
That's not one that we often say. People say the Sunday school answer, Jesus is loving, Jesus is kind, Jesus is compassionate. Jesus is blunt when needed. Jesus is right to the point when needed. And we see here that Jesus is blunt. I mean, look at other passages, you know. When you go up to a Pharisee and you say, you know, you are whitewashed tombs with dead men's bones inside, that's not exactly kind and compassionate and loving sounding, is it? No, it's pretty blunt. When Jesus went into the temple or into the temple foreground and they were selling things, right? He didn't go in there and says, oh, would you guys kindly move? You know, I think you're blocking the way. Would you kind of get out of the way, please? I really appreciate it. No. He gets a whip and he goes through, you know. That is not exactly all peacey and love. Right? Jesus was very kind. He was very compassionate. But he's not one of these guys that's going to pussyfoot around. He's not one of these guys that's going to be the typical diplomat. He's going to come in and he's going to point to the problem. He says, this needs to be fixed. Let's look again at the first question Jesus decides to ask Peter. He says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, what these is this? Is it the fish or is it the disciples? Are you sure? See, a lot of people will say that it's the disciples. But the word in Greek, hotos, is actually neutral. It can be the disciples. It can be the fish. The thing is both work. Both have meaning here. Either way, the point is, Peter, who do you love more? Why do you love more? Pointed question. A good question. And notice how he says it. He doesn't say, hey, Peter. Hey, Peter, which he's been calling him. What does he call him? He says, Simon, son of John. Now the passage it says, Simon, son of Jonah. And there's talk about how that actually means. Same person. Whether John went by Jonah sometimes and said, we don't know. But the point is, listen to that. Simon, son of Jonah. Okay? It's a very formal thing, right? Back then, if you said Simon bar Jonah, being son of, like that, it was a very, I'm identifying you. This is who you are. Almost a legal thing. What happened to the closeness? Why is he doing this? Maybe he's wanting Peter to make a very official statement. To really put it on the line. This is a contractual thing. I don't know. But the point is that he uses this almost legal oath that he's asking Peter to make. He's saying, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Another thing we can see here, if it is career, if it's fish, it's basically career versus Christ, isn't it? And that's what he's asking. Do you love me more than you love your job? You're a fisherman. Do you love me more than these great fish? Do you love me more than the things you can get from the world? Thing is, the Bible talks about we cannot serve two masters, right? You cannot serve God and mammon, because the thing is, you're going to love one and hate the other one. So Christ is giving him a choice. He says, do you love me more than these? Let's say it's the disciples, though. Do you love me more than these guys love you? You said you did. Way back in Matthew 26:33, he was saying, even if these other guys reject you. Not me. Not me. And that's where that deny me 3 times came back. Even if all these other disciples turn their back on you, not me, Lord. Peter, do you really love me more than these? Is that really what's going on here? It's a good question. Jesus wants to know where Peter's heart is. What's he thinking? What do you really believe, Peter? After all, Peter, despite his strong words, despite his swearing, Peter still abandoned Jesus. But Jesus provides Peter a path to restoration. He provides him a path to restoration. You see, God knows us intimately. And Jesus knows Peter. First, in this path to restoration, Jesus does not condemn Peter for denying him 3 times. But denial is pretty serious, isn't it? In fact, it says that he who denies me, right? Jesus says, he who denies me, I'll deny before my Father. Alyssa, by the way, we're on that next point. He who denies me, I will deny before my Father. So it's serious, right? But his 3 questions of asking Peter to affirm his love are interesting. Are they somehow repudiating the denials? Is he giving Peter the chance to take those denials back? A lot of theologians, a lot of interpreters of this say so. It's very possible. Maybe he's, by doing it 3 times, he's able to take back each one of those denials. But either way, what Jesus is doing here is he's really probing down to the issue. He's really trying to give Peter a chance to really come back and really say, Jesus, I'm sorry. I do love you. I really do. I really do. Did Peter catch on to what's going on? I think so. And he's hurt by it. He's hurt by it. But confessing our love is vital. You know, I can blame my daughter. Daughter, I'm blaming. I'm blaming my daughter for getting me hooked on Asian dramas. She got me hooked, first on Japanese dramas, then Korean dramas. And I resisted. I really did. But she got me hooked. And not only do I watch them sometimes with her and my wife, I watch them by myself sometimes. No, I know. But you know what? In these dramas, what is something that always stands out? Huh?
They cry a lot.
They cry a lot. Oh man, I'm like, really? Are these people that emotional? Goodness gracious. It's like one giant whine. But, despite all that, the thing that you look for in the drama, that you're waiting for, the romantic ones at least, is the confession. The confession, I like you. They don't say, I love you, you know. Usually it's like, I like you. But it's that confession, it's that love, right? And then all of a sudden the drama changes. Everything changes because that confession is basically in many ways a form of commitment. Of saying that I'm willing to pursue this relationship in this way. In a week or so, we've got a couple, they're not here today, but a couple that from our church is going to get married. Brandon and Sabrina. And when they get up there in front of Brandon's dad in the ceremony, they're going to take some vows. I bet you one of those vows has something to do with love. Right? I promise to what? Love, cherish, etc., etc. Depending on how you phrase it. Did you say that to Samantha? I guess so. Maybe. Yeah, that's part of the wedding vows. It's part of what we say, right? It's a commitment. You are confessing your love. You are saying this is true. Now, people can say I love you all the time. You know, the fake ones. Hey, I love you, baby. Yeah, if you really love me, you watch those. But there is, though, in confession of love, true love, there's a form of commitment there. There's a promise there. Second, though, is love must be expressed. It's not just said. It needs to be expressed. And Peter's a doer. Peter's one of these guys that he has to be doing something. Every time we see Peter, he's doing something. Maybe the wrong thing, but he's doing something. Right? He needs a specific task. And Christ, man, he's going to give him three specific jobs here. Because he knows Peter. He knows what Peter needs. And these are similar, but they're different. The three tasks are this. First of all, feed my lambs. Feed my lambs. What's a lamb like?
Big and strong and ready to conquer the world, right?
No. Lambs are cute and you're cuddly. We want to hug them and say, oh, sweet thing to them, right? Oh, we like our lambs. They're pretty, they're cute, they're cuddly, they're great. Right? They're also helpless. A lamb against a wolf's not going to stand much of a chance. A lamb against almost anything is not going to stand much of a chance because a lamb is helpless. It's like a baby. And babies, what do they eat? They need milk. What's the thing about milk? You know mother's milk? Mother's milk provides immunity, antibodies to the baby. In fact, studies have been shown that if the baby has an infection, interestingly enough, the mother's milk changes in composition. It changes in producing more white, in being made up of more white blood cells and some other factors that help combat the infection in the child. All right? Interesting stuff. about what's going on. Christ says, feed my lambs. These are the new believers. These are the ones who need to know the basics. They need to get that basic protection. They need to be able to understand the truths that are going to help them. They need to understand these new things that are coming on so that they can grow. They can build strong bones spiritually. And so he says, feed my lambs. The second thing he says is take care of my sheep. This is all of them, right? My flock, the people who are going to come follow me, they're going to need guidance. They're going to need direction. Simon, take care of my sheep. Third thing he says, feed my sheep. In other words, my sheep, not just my lambs, my sheep, they're more mature. They're going to need something with more substance. They need more deeper teaching. They also need to grow. They can't just have on milk. Feed my sheep. Other than for the kingdom, though, why are these tasks so important? Listen to what Jesus says in John 14:50. John 14:50. He says, if you love me, keep my commands. If you love me, keep my commands. See, obedience shows our love for God. Obedience shows our love for God, and obedience to someone in authority shows our respect, shows our honor. You know, we talk about children obey your parents. Kids can do a lot of things to show their love. They can draw little crayon pictures. They can go, I love you, Mommy, I love you, Daddy. They can do all that kind of stuff, right? But one of the primary ways a child shows that they love the parents is by obeying, by honoring. Now, I don't mean, there's abuse there. There are parents out there that are crazy. Hey, kid, go buy me drugs. Okay? Or, hey, kid, jump off the roof. Those kinds of things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a normal, healthy parent-child relationship. The way a child oftentimes shows that really, or she really loves a parent, is by obeying. Because when they don't, they create wedges. That we don't need, and that's where you need restoration. Jesus expands on what he's saying in John 14:23-24. He says, Jesus replied, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. The teaching here, it's not capricious demands. It's not go buy me drugs or anything else. They're teaching. They're things that are designed for the good rather than the harm of the one who's being taught. Remember that God is for us and not against us. Third, only when Peter is fully restored can he be the person he needs to be for the future. Matthew 16:15-19. He says, but what about you, he asks. Jesus is talking to Peter. He says, who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Powerful stuff. Simon was named Peter for a reason. He was going to be a rock. He was going to be a leader. See, Jesus, from the very beginning, saw in Peter, one of his first disciples, He saw potential. He saw who Peter would become, who Peter could become if Peter would follow him. So Jesus has worked with him all this time. Even when Peter has turned away, even when Peter has denied him, you don't see Jesus just throwing Peter away. Instead, you see Jesus working to restore him, to bring him back, to correct him, to rebuke him, to bring him back into the right relationship. Because Jesus, just like his Father, is all about reconciliation. All about restoration. But the restoration process can be painful. How many of you like confrontation? Anybody? Anybody? Not one, no, two. Confrontation. Love to get in somebody's face. Now some of you are like, oh, well, yeah, okay. Confrontation, man, a lot of us kind of run from that, right? But the thing is confrontation is a big part of the restoration process. You need it. Object lesson time, people. I am going to show you two friends. Friend number one, friend number two. Or friend number one, friend number two. I don't know. You know? Whatever. Okay, two friends. Close, right? No problems. Like each other. But let's say that there's a fight that goes on. Something happens. Let's say there is a rift in the relationship. Let's see if I can actually cut. I failed cutting and pasting in kindergarten. All right. Here we go. Stay. Here is our relationship now. Is it good? Looks nice. There's a gap here. There's a rift between the two. So, but let's say friend one and friend two are colleagues. They have to work together. They got to get along somehow. Don't you like my bridge? We got a bridge. They can go from here to there. They can get along. The relationship's healed, right? No, there's a bridge. You can talk. But there's a gap still. So, let's say that one of these people decide to try to get the relationship right. And so they work at it. Okay. Here we go. It's all healed, right? Why? Because in a relationship, when you confront, you can only go so far. You can forgive. You can forgive somebody. You can desire to get the relationship right. But until you really get down into confrontation, and until that other person comes alongside as well and tries to work for reconciliation, you will only have this. True reconciliation takes both sides, and that is why confrontation is so important. Because if someone hurts you, you need to get into their life and you say, listen, I want to get this right between us. Because it's not. You may have forgotten this incident, but I haven't. And I forgive you. And I'm trying to be back where we are. But maybe you need to forgive me too. Maybe there's some other things going on. You have to work at it. That's why confrontation is so important. Because without opening the wound, without exposing the problem, most times you can't keep it. It's like an infection that's deep down. Right? What do doctors have to do sometimes with an abscess? They have to go down there and they actually have to pierce down there and they have to release that infection to get it out. You can't just smooth some cream over and expect it to get better. You have to go in and clean it out. Same thing with confession. When you confess, what are you doing? You're opening up the channel for forgiveness. The Bible says, confess your sins. If we confess our sins to God, He is what? Faithful and just to forgive us our sins. That's what God does. That's what we should do in relationships. We should confront. We should confess. We should forgive. We should heal those relationships. Unfortunately, the need for restoration is rarely a one-time thing. It's rarely a one-time thing. Why? Because people are still human. We make mistakes. We goof up. We sin. We're often callous. We're insensitive. Look again at Peter's response to John's following of him and Jesus, John 21, 20 through 22. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them, the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Hey, Lord, what about him? What about him? Jesus answered, If I want him to remain alive until I return, what's that to you? You must follow me. Now, this question and response is very interesting. Okay? Why the question, first of all? Why is Peter so concerned about John? Is it because he really is concerned about John? Maybe. But Jesus' reaction is interesting if that's the issue. Jesus is saying, why are you concerned? What's it to you? You follow me. You see, following God, following Jesus is an individual thing. It's not us looking around at our neighbors in church and saying, they're not doing it. It's us. Us following God. Our relationship with Christ. And that's what Christ wants. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be concerned about other people. First and foremost, we need to get our own hearts right with God. We need to follow Christ. Peter has a lot to learn. He has a long way to go. Then again, so do we, don't we? So ultimately, our question today is, are you in need of some restoration? What's your relationship like with Jesus? Are there some strains? Is there some distance? Does it look like this? Or maybe a little bit worse? Thing is that Jesus is always willing to come up to here. He's willing to put that peace back. But it only works if both sides meet. You and I have to work to get right with God. We have to listen to His quiet voice. What about with others? Is restoration needed? What about with your brothers and sisters? With your husband or your wife? What about with your friends? Your roommates? Your parents? Is restoration needed? I want to leave today with this thought. Restoration is an art form that we all should study. Let's pray. Lord God, I thank you for your word, and I thank you, Lord, that you're all about reconciliation. You're all about restoration. That you want us back in a right relationship with you. And you want us in a right relationship with those around us. Lord, you're passionate about relationships. And I just pray that you make us as passionate as you are. Lord, may there be nothing between us. May there be no blocks, no sin, no unconfessed sin, Lord, between us. May we get right with you. May we seek full restoration. And may we seek full restoration with others, Lord. Not holding back, not holding grudges. Confronting when needed. And being willing to be confronted. Help us, Lord, to be all you have us, would have us be. In Christ's name.